This is Miss Kellie Michele, and we have another episode of the Rental Revenue Builders Show. In this episode, we are going to be talking about rehabbing. Now, all of us do not really rehab on a regular basis, but some of us do, and we will share our experiences from our standpoints, whether we just do it a little bit, we don't do it at all, or if we are really, really advanced at rehabbing properties, right? All right, so we have Dom today and Michele. Say hello, you guys.
How you guys doing?
All right. So let's go ahead and jump right in, and let's just give a brief overview of your rehab experience. Now, again, we all don't have the same experience, but so for example, myself, I barely rehab at all. So I only have maybe a few experiences that I can share about rehabbing. My thing is really the long-term rentals and midterm rentals, and I stay on that side. So, Dominique, talk about your experience with the multifamily and how you approach the rehab or the repair work that has to be done on those types of properties.
Yeah, so obviously my strategy is really targeting multifamily properties that are turnkey. And 90% of the time I'm buying these properties as is. And when you're looking at multifamily properties, I would say the main issues or the main causes or the main repairs that you need to focus on that these buildings are going to have is one, maybe some foundational issues or plumbing issues. And then the next issue may just be the roofing, right? So those are the three major concerns that you may have to look at just to make sure your building is not in violation, code violation with the city. And before you even start to even address the repairs, you need to make sure that you are following the mandates and the laws of the city. In some locations, you can actually just reach out to a licensed plumber. You can reach out to a licensed, roofer, and you can kind of get things started, correct? But in a specific city that I own property in Illinois, you actually have to go to the city. You actually need to vet out a licensed general contractor, and that general contractor needs to go to the city, right, and present what they're going to be doing, how they're going to do it. They also need to present their license and file a permit with the city in order to get the work started, right? That's the process that should happen if you're in a specific city that has those mandates. You reach out to a general contractor, and then from that point on, they have to file a permit and then come up with an overall budget of how much this is going to cost, right? So, in my experience, what I found is literally a multifamily building that I had to renovate. I needed a new decking on the second floor of the building. And I also, I bought the building and it also stated that it had some foundation issues that I needed to address. With that being said, I located a general contractor and they were able to address the decking issue that was under code violation and do an inspection of the foundation. With that being said, there were no foundation issues with this building, but in this process of them examining the foundation, what we found is, like I said, these buildings are sometimes 30, 40 years old, right? So the plumbing was completely outdated. We had galvanized piping. We had piping that actually was unfortunately coming apart. And
Okay.
in these situations, while you're down there and you have access to the plumbing, you have to address these issues. So that being said, I went through a vetting process of like 2 to 3 contractors, and it took me a while to actually act and address the repairs because the process of actually finding a contractor that's tried and true and that you can trust and that you can actually send them and wire them funds and they will do the job and they will stand on their word. I mean, that can take some time. You don't want to just jump into a deal or a project with a contractor and not have them fully vetted and referred by someone else who had a great experience, right? So that's just been my experience. Again, I don't rehab a lot. I like to really just focus on turnkey properties, but this specific property, although it was turnkey, it did have some foundational issues that we needed to address, plumbing, and then also some roofing issues that we needed to address as well.
So, follow up questions just to what you just told us. The city requires you to have a general contractor. You couldn't have just hired a foundation company and they couldn't pull their own permits to do the work.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that you need to really decide for yourself, right? The city requires a general contractor to do the work to make sure that they're licensed with that specific city. But there's also a way around that, just like you said. You can reach out to, let's say, if you're doing a plumbing job, you can reach out to a licensed plumber and actually have that plumber go and pull the permit for your property and actually get the work done at maybe, a 10 to 20% less of an upfront cost rather than going through a general contractor. So you're correct in that situation, you can kind of go both routes. Again, when you own property out of state, you also have to look at your overall involvement and just, individuals who will represent you well in front of the city and kind of handle your project from 2,000 miles away, right? So
Right.
I'm a big relationship guy. And if I have to pay an extra maybe $1,000, maybe $1,500 for a project, that literally my general contractors will go to the city, represent me well, make sure I'm not, in any code violations, and make sure I'm not in building court, make sure everything's just done correctly. I think that extra $1,000 or $1,500, that's priceless, right? Just peace of mind and just having somebody to represent you well on behalf of your property management and a general contractor standpoint, I think is just absolutely priceless. So you can go either route. Like I said, you can actually hire a licensed company to go pull that permit and get the work done for you. But in my situation, I definitely just leaned on my relationship and
Mhm.
just had them run point with the entire project.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I get that. It makes it easier. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't a requirement for a general contractor, but that's not the case. It's not required, but you do have to get someone who's able to pull those permits and get the work done and make sure it's done correct. Okay.
Correct.
And then my other question is, because you're dealing with a multifamily building, when it comes to plumbing and maybe like electrical, whatever, things where you have to actually go into units and walls and things like that, how do you handle that with the tenants?
So it can be tough, when you first purchase a property, you need to actually set up your building and have basically the right entry keys that will work for every single door. So for my 10 unit building, I have a standard master key that only me and my management have access to. And this key will not only open every door in the building, but I also have individual keys for each different unit. And those keys that the tenants have, they only have access to the units that they're supposed to have access to. So first come first, you need to have a master key. And why do you need a master key, right? When you have plumbing issues like this and you need to basically schedule coordination with mitigation companies or licensed plumbers to come out and repair something, a lot of times this has to be addressed right away because water can kind of kill cash flow, right? It can
Mm-hmm.
cause damage, it can literally displace tenants. So in this situation, if a tenant is not available, you need to basically send them a notice. Hey, I need 20, here's your 24-hour notice. Even if you're not home, we need access to the unit and we'll be coming in to repair X, Y, and Z. So it can be tough from a scheduling standpoint. But again, when you first purchase your property, you need master keys to the entire, like literally every door in the building, and that will kind of alleviate tenants, kind of just pushing back, saying that they're not available or you can't come in and things like that.
Okay, okay. So yeah, when you were talking about plumbing, I'm thinking like about a major plumbing thing where, let's just say the plumbing is totally outdated and you need to replace everything. And I know that could be a big task in an apartment
Yeah,
building. So
for
yeah,
sure,
that's
for
why.
sure. Yeah. The plumbing that I'm referring to is mainly the plumbing, the main kind of like sewer line under the building.
Okay.
Also the kitchen lines that actually run from all the units down to the crawl space, down to obviously the main plumbing line outside of the building to the sewer trap. So basically everything under the building needed to be addressed and replaced. And that's not something that, obviously we need to get into the units for. But it is something that we need to kind of notify the tenants, hey, 24 hours before, the water will probably be turned off in regards to the repair to the plumbing for the building.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you so much, Dominique, for sharing that and explaining that to us. So let's switch over to you, Michele, because Michele is a contractor. She used to have a contracting company, and she also is a real estate investor. So she has a wealth of knowledge about rehabbing. So, Michele, can you just provide a brief overview about your experience in regards to rehabbing houses?
Yes, the client investor side and then the investor client side. That's how I started into real estate investing, was in the residential out in Florida, and worked my way up with the intention of becoming a real estate investor. So that's how I started. I don't know if it was a good thing, because it was a good knowing how to weed out the BS. Because I will tell you, for whatever reason, contractors assume because you're a real estate investor that we have lots of money and that we're getting rich off these houses. And so they still to this day, they'll gouge me on pricing and thinking that I may or may not know. They are, even though we have a very pretty good vetting process, and this is coming from someone experienced, I had a contractor walk out on us 3 weeks ago. So I do have experience I've done over 300 fix and flips, not for my personal portfolio, but for others. So think about interior, exterior painting, redoing bathrooms and so forth. We stayed away from any major electrical and major roofing. However, now being on the investor side, we do also do buy and holds, but we do renovations. So we purchase properties that are distressed, that do need about 60,000 in renovations, give or take. That's our threshold. I am currently working on a project right now that needed everything completed. So foundation, electrical, and getting permits. So very different approach.
When we talk about the approach, and you both shared a little bit about how you identify and approach properties and say, okay, this is the one I want. When you're looking at that criteria, as far as from the investment side, what would that criteria be? So, for example, for me, if I have to do a lot of work to a property, like major systems, I'm okay with that. So I'm okay with air conditioning, like hazmat kind of stuff. I'm okay with the cosmetic, the paints, and, little things like that. Maybe even flooring. But when it gets into major things like really updating kitchens and bathrooms or roofs and big major plumbing and all of those major things, I don't want to do it. I'm not even a big fan of rehabbing because of the things that go into it. I do it out of necessity. So for example, I'm actually just wrapped up a property. It wasn't a major rehab, but it took longer than it was supposed to take. But even still, I went into it with thinking, okay, it just needs a few things. I can get it done and get out of it. And right now, I had the inspection last week for the city, and I have to get it re-inspected next week. I'm so happy I'm done with this property. I did everything for the inspection. It's going to be a long-term rental. I'm out. I'm happy about that. I don't want to do a rehab.
Mm-hmm.
What about you guys? What is your approach to identifying a potential property that you specifically are okay with rehabbing?
My approach, really, obviously, in the residential side, the uglier the house, the better the price and the potential of good of ARV. Even though, so that's kind of what the approach is, even though you have to know your risk tolerance. Being a former contractor, I will go in, like I said, a medium rehab. And a medium rehab here in Texas is anywhere from 40 to about 60,000. Current rehab as well, even though it's one of my major ones, is still a smaller unit, smaller property, and doing the same. But really, that's it's really what your price point is, right? So everyone shook their head about it being that the more work, the cheaper it is for you to get, and then really looking at the market. So you really want to see what the potential opportunity is there. What that means is, what are you buying it out as a discount? What is the actual rehab? And where are you how much money are you going to make? And what is that for you if that's a comfortable number? So I know that there's probably a lot of things that are out there that people talk about, triple digit flip and all of that. Those are very few and far between. And I will tell you, as a former contractor, we're never on the right. You indicate as far as getting your bids, unless you guys let me know, and then I'll hire you to do my construction. But you're never right on the bids. They're never, if they say, okay, we're going to do 50,000, and you do a 10 to 20% contingency fee, meaning giving it a buffer. You're always, it usually goes above and beyond, and it could go with the cosmetics. It could go once you open up the walls. It could go with, like you said, inspectors. We recently had it where they're like, your grandfather did on the plumbing, but we were finishing the electrical. We had to update the electrical. We had to update the roofing. So we did a change order for the electrical, and it went from, that's a big change order. Oh yeah. And it had to be done because everything else is like, okay, we're getting everything else ready. Why keep the cast iron plumbing? So this project's we're way over. So I don't know if that answers your question, but a lot of what you want to look at is the ARV, what the potential is, what you're getting the property at, and really, really don't go by one bid. You want to go to 3 to 6 bids, and I know that sounds like a lot of work. 3 bids is your minimum. And I'm telling you this because you want to make sure that you're vetting out, just like John said, the right contractor, but you'll also realize and start to learn, especially if you're new in, the 5 mechanicals is really what you always want. If the bare minimum of what you're looking for, the 5 mechanicals, which is plumbing, HVAC, help me out, guys, electrical, and then you have roofing, and then your general labor and your construction. So you want to look at that. In San Antonio, well, 99% of them are foundation issues. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So Florida, I didn't have to deal with that.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point. Like when you're in this process of obviously choosing a project and figuring out, hey, how do I start the rehab, right? That 3 to 6 bid, obviously 3 as a minimum, and then 6 is perfect, right? That's just like gold standard, right? Like you need to have at least 5 to 6 bids regardless. And the reason why I want to speak to this is because I've actually been, kind of down this road, and I've got burned before. And the reason why is because even though I did my due diligence of getting 3 bids, I went with the lowest bid, right? And a lot of times, we look at our budget, we have the funds for maybe, the mid bid or maybe even the highest bid, but hey, let's save some money. This guy said he's going to do it for the lowest number. In my experience, guys, man, that literally kept me up at night. And you don't want a project that literally is just going to like not, allow you to sleep. I had contractors, and I didn't even know I had subcontractors in this job, but literally I had individuals stop the job and say, hey, X, Y, and Z, this person never paid me. And now my entire job actually was at a halt because the person wanted to do the work, but somebody else ran off with basically the initial investment or the initial cash that I paid. So I went with the lowest bid, and guess what? I got the lackluster service. Not to mention that I was doing a flooring project, and they never actually did my project the correct way. The flooring needed to be leveled first before they tile the entire, space. It was like a 1,500 square foot tile job, and they did not level. They just threw the tile together. The tile feels just like very, very rough. You got to have on socks when you walk on the floor. It's so like rigid and rough. So don't go with the lowest bid. For the audience out there, you need to vet. Yes, you need 3 to 6 bids, but by no means go with that lowest bid. I don't care what's going on in your budget, because you'll end up in a situation like myself where I couldn't even sleep for like a week.
Oh yes, lesson learned.
Yes.
Lesson learned.
And now, and one of the things you mentioned earlier, it could be in multifamily, it's a different thing, but guys, please, 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 and it's coming from a contractor, do not give any money up front. So think about if you're in corporate America transitioning right now into investment world, right? And do you go into your job the first day you show up and do you get a check before you start doing your work?
Nope.
So you nobody gets paid before you do it. And I know it's tough. I had my former business partner, as I mentioned, now she's a partner, my mom came from corporate America and would fight me on this because she was going against the grain of nobody's going to do it. We've talked to 20 people and nobody's going to do a job before it is. And you feel frustrated, like maybe I'm not doing something right. I'm telling you right now, every single time I give it a dang deposit, it has always bit me in the butt. So what I'm trying to tell you is you can do a draw system. You can say, get work done up to this particular stage, 20% of the 100% of the job done. After you do 20% of work, I'll give you your money. The faster you get at it, the faster it is. I use hard money lenders, and there's times I don't use hard money lenders for the construction side. I use private money lenders. You guys know that if you've been on the previous calls. I still say that it's locked up in an escrow account so that I can feel better on my conscience of not lying to them, even though it's in the bank. I'm telling you right now, make sure that at least they get started with the stuff. The minimal stuff is get the materials, buy the materials, buy that, and that will get them the labor, unfortunately. And they have to understand this. You have to work. I want to see what that is. Dom, you brought up a good point. We have a lot of resources now, YouTube, how to do a tile floor. You don't have to be the one on doing the tile floor, but you got to know what the steps are. And there's plenty of YouTube videos out there to say it. Even though most of the time I don't tell individuals that I was a contractor, I want to see how they tell me how the job should be. And I've had people come in, and again, this is a private group, but because I'm a female, make it seem like it's a big extravagant thing. And like, oh my gosh, we have to do this, and we have to go extra. And it's like, it's a rehab, and we're just painting walls. You didn't have to tear down the wall and do new drywall. But again, it's trying to get more work and stuff. So there's just a lot of little things that you have to look into, but do not give. Main thing I would say, and I'm sure everyone here can attest to this, giving the money up front, they'll walk away, they'll run. They won't come back.
And I'm glad you made that point to at least you can get the materials, yes, but the labor, no. So make sure that's very, very clear. You can buy the materials up front, but not the labor. Thanks for sharing that, Michele. Now, Alejandro, I know you do hard money lending and you've done some rehabbing. What extent of rehabbing have you done?
So I haven't done a complete flip on my own. I mean, I've funded those, but so I've learned both ways because I've been curious about it. Doing in the hard money lending, you get all the proposals and you go see the house and then you look at their scope of work. So that for me, I almost went backwards because in the past, I would agree with what Michele said before. The project I did, it was a duplex. The upstairs needed a pretty extensive rehab, bathroom, kitchen, windows, bunch of stuff, and had a contractor look at it, somebody that had used before on smaller things, but like always, they'll quote you something, but once you get inside and bust open a wall or something, and you, oh man, this needs a whole new stack. And it was true. I mean, I did see that, and I realized, oh, and then it rained one day, and I didn't know this, but it rained, and then there was a lot of water coming in the basement, and then we realized, oh shoot, they don't have a good drainage here, so I had to hire somebody to do drainage, and so, needless to say, I would say always assume it's going to be more because there are going to be contingencies, things you don't know that are going to show up, but the piece that I would say is, and I mentioned it before, I'm a person that always collaborates. I'm always looking to learn from people. And that's why when I've done the hard money lending, I'm asking questions. You'd be surprised how much people will tell you if you just ask them questions. So, I'll say, so this bathroom, how'd you come up with this price amount? Yeah, I would just ask him. In some of my first deals, you said it's going to cost 10,000. What are you going to do? And then he told me, oh, in this situation, this is what's going on. We want to use a different kind of tile in this neighborhood. It's more upper class. So we want a different kind of, we're not going to go with just basic contractor materials. So then you understand sometimes the differences of the nuances of why one bathroom is going to be 10 and another is going to be 6.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for me, it's just been, it's really been learning from scopes of work that I get, walking houses. And again, I don't know how to do a lot of that work, but I have gotten pretty good at understanding how much it costs in the materials, and also knowing, I think we talked about this before, that right now we're in a time where the cost of labor is going up, and materials have they're still not like it used to be before the COVID time, but the labor cost I've seen has certainly increased because you don't have the pool of that labor. The supply, right. the supply of that labor is diminishing more and more, at least people that can do it really good. So I think right now in the next few years, we're really going to see, it's going to be interesting, I think, in this space to understand or to see what's going to happen on that contractor side, because unless you get more people in these trades that become skilled, those prices are going to keep going up because there's going to be fewer people who are really good that can deliver on time and on budget.
Yeah. So how do you guys feel about, like, I know for contractors, for myself, just on this recent project, I kind of heavily relied on other investors who have used the contractors before. So like maybe going into Facebook groups that are for real estate investors and just asking the question, like, who knows a good plumber, electrician, just utilizing those resources. I've been pretty successful using that and getting good people. Now, I can't tell you if I got the right prices because I'm still not as good. I don't know all of the prices and what things should really, really cost because I'm really not a rehabber, right? But I did have some success finding some good contractors that way. Have you guys ever done anything like that?
Yeah, I have. Just recently I was betting, and again, like I said, you never know if you're going to get it right. So on this project, we're on a third person that we've had to work on, and it's such a small project. But the first one, we needed foundation. So we got a general contractor, and that was something Don brought up earlier. One of the things in my interview questions is, are you going to sub out the work? I am currently on one other project. They subbed out the work and I'm in a big pickle with that. And nobody's taking it, taking responsibility or accountability on it. So I'm very big about, are you subbing out the work? Because all that means, guys, if they're subbing it out, they're taking a finder's fee. That's typically what it is. They're taking a finder's fee and just taking the responsibility and signing the contract with you, and they're not doing the work. So depending if you're starting out or not, you might want to know if they're going to physically do it themselves, because then you can hold them responsible. It's really up to how you do it. So I had someone that I wanted her to be the project manager. She found the foundation guy. The foundation guy he was top notch and real. I found out she wasn't. She's the reason why we skipped out on the scope of work of the plumbing, because I asked. And that's kind of, once you get to a certain level, like you can hire a project manager, just like Dom said, for the convenience. And that's how at this time I was doing 5 projects at once. So they could be able to monitor, and you get what you pay, you're paying for that service. And I knew that's what then the foundation found me the people that we had now. And then one of the things and I've always gone in Facebook groups and stuff like that, but I'll ask other investors because they're going to know. And the biggest thing is finding investor-friendly contractors or subs. Because when I say investor-friendly, they're going to understand what the hard money lender, kind of the payout. They're going to understand that you're not wanting to do the high-end, if you're not in a high-end area. You're wanting whatever your exit strategy is. So sometimes they'll know that. But yes, I've used other people to be able to get current contractors.
So, okay, I know for myself, I've used general contractors, and then I've ultimately ended up having to be the general contractor because, just things have happened or the project was taking too long or whatever it may be. Or you, like you just said, Michele, you had what was their title? Was it a property or project manager?
So a project manager overseeing the project. That's the same as usually a general contractor. So just
Okay.
understand a GC, a general contractor, gets the license in that state to be able to be, they have to go through some schooling, but they're really not physically hands-on doing the job. They are managing the job and managing subcontractors. So they're expected. That's why sometimes if you go straight to a general contractor, they'll be $15,000 for something versus if you go to a guy, he's 7,500 to $8,000. So they're managing the project, and most of the time these individuals don't even manage. But yes, you stepped in as a project manager. We usually project manage our own projects.
Okay. Okay. Because I'm like, this is not getting done in a timely fashion. Let me just make these calls and interview these, contractors, and let's get this moving. And I found that to be easier in a way as far as the flow of things, making sure we're just staying on top of it. Because when I've used general contractors in the past, usually it's like I have to wait for them to be free, especially if they're good. I have to wait for them to be available. And then the other problem I've had is contractors bouncing from one job to another job to another job, and they're not solely focusing on getting my job done. But I guess that's what comes with the questions you ask, Michele, to the contractors. Maybe I need to start coming up with those good interview questions, and that could help out in finding the right contractor.
It's all in the interview, guys. It's all in the interview, and it's all in the contract. And I will not stress this enough. You need to have a contract. So kind of our process of what we do, if you don't mind me kind of sharing, just so that you guys can have some pointers. When are you available? Obviously, if they're a good contractor, they're going to be busy. Right now, there's somebody that was just recommended to us. And I said, are you available for the next 2 weeks? I don't personally like people jumping around to different jobs. It just, my jobs we're not building a commercial building. I need to be in and out. So are you available? How many jobs do you currently have right now? What is your skill set and what you do? Every single contractor says, I do everything. And then when they get in there, they do nothing. And so I'd say, if you had to bet your life on it, what would you say you are very skilled at? And I would say you would do it. And then that's when the layers start to come up. Well, I'm like, you do everything. So you jump on a roof? Well, no, I really don't. Okay, so you do flooring? Well, no. What would you say your niche is that I can count on you for? Because they always want to pick up that job. So when we do that, then the biggest other thing, guys, is if they have a license or their correct credentials. Some of these guys don't like to get paid on the books. I'm sorry, I'm running a business. And let me tell you, regardless if you have one house or if you have 100, if you do not have it where you have their information and you do not have a W-9 from them, you will be taxed for that actual cost. And most of these rehabs, even a little rehab is $20,000. You will be taxed for that and you will be held liable by the IRS. So they have to fill out a W-9. I collect their driver's license. I don't care what, I collect their driver's license. I've had more contractors walk off my job than not. I just had one right now. And they make sure they have their own tools. That's a big thing. Tools and transportation. I know it sounds very, very just as far as like you would think sense-wise, common sense, but you'd be surprised. Oh no, I hitch a ride from here and here and here. And for me, I make sure that they are available and they understand. They will go to Home Depot or to the hardware store to pick up the actual stuff, because that's always a loss in translation. And then I have it where it's tied to my Home Depot account. It's free for you to get access to see it, because I want to make sure what the receipts are. It's good for your cost, but it's also good to know that they're not buying tools on your budget. And I found so many people buying tools. Oh, I needed a saw for this. And I'm like, you're going to run with the blade for your other projects. I'm not paying for that. That's why you're charging me. So we get a contract in place, and there's so many different contracts that are out there. We're part of some masterminds that we have contracts, but in that contracts, it is what's your scope of work? So what's your task list, right? What's the scope of work you're responsible for? When are you supposed to start? When are you supposed to finish? For me, I don't like anybody working on any other jobs. Now, if they have the crews to be able to do it, then we can, then I understand. Everybody has, to put food on the table. But if I'm talking about your 3-4 man crews, I don't like it. Because what also happens if you decide to put a deposit down, guys, I'm telling you right now, they're using your deposit to pay the payroll that they pay for your other project. I'm letting you know right now. And that is why hard money lenders don't give you money up front. Hard money lenders don't give you money for the construction most of the time until that part of that is done. That's why we're on draws, because hard money lenders are smart and they know. And so that's one of the major things. And in the contract, I do have a fee on there if they don't show up to the job. There are time and time again that they're not on my job. And most of them will say, I'm not, what? You have that on your contract? No, I'm going to be here at the job and I'm going to be there and I'm going to at least have a man here. I'm like, well, then you have no problem signing my contract. I have it's $150 a day, every day that someone's not there. And I'll feel free to give you one of my standard contracts. I have some that it's not so long, but you have to protect yourself, guys, because just like what I'm dealing with right now, my contractor walked off the job because they said that they were able to do 2 major things. And then they found out that they couldn't do the second one, which was the electrical. And then I had to find someone and they walked off the job and they think that they're not going to have any consequences. They signed a binding contract with me, and any city or state, that's a breach of contract. And so they have caused my project to go 2 weeks behind. So they're in a rude of awakening that they think that they just could have walked off my job. And now I got to go through the whole process again. Vet the contractors, do the same thing. And I get to do you have to do the process over and over.
Yeah.
And
not only that, you have to go after them for walking off the job.
Yeah. Good luck on that. I know it's a lot. But I mean, and again, it's just, you have to be on top of it. That's one thing. And remember, every single day that the project is not moving forward, you're losing money because your hard money lender or your private money lender is charging you interest every single day.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not, I can't go to Alejandro and say, Alejandro, they walked off and I need 2 weeks for you to stop my daily interest. Alejandro will say, I don't know what to tell you. He's like,
interest don't stop. No.
No.
I think those are some great points in regards to contractors. I mean, we've all vetted plenty of contractors, right? And I've even got down to the process of what type of vehicle, what type of truck is the contractor operating in, right?
Yeah.
That is a telltale of the type of business that they're going to do with you. Look at their truck. Is the truck, is it clean or is it organized? Are there tools in the back where, you can see some sort of organization, right? How are they presenting themselves? 9 times out of 10, if the back of that F-150 is just a mess, maybe their home is a mess as well, which probably means your business is going to be messy. So have a good understanding of how they're operating their business, but also look at the vehicle that they're driving. Look at how they're operating on a day-to-day basis, just based on the truck, right?
Yeah.
Look how organized that they are with their business. And I think that is going to be a telltale, and it will, in the end, it's going to help you vet out which contractor to choose.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we all have soft spots. I mean, I know I do. I think my biggest challenge is because I've been on the other side, right? I sometimes have that soft spot, and now I have someone that's there. But then I think about it. This guy walked off, and I'm 3 weeks behind, and however much I have in hard money lending, and now having to redo this process. Who's caring about us, right? Who's caring about me now having to go through this process? So I've learned to get a little bit more stickler, but exactly what you said, how you do one thing is how you do everything, period. If you're going to be, and that's the thing, is that with this business, you guys have to, and I'm very emphasizing, this is a very passionate subject for me because this can break you. This can break you from going into investing if you're not really careful on it, if you're not over analyzing on it, if you slip through the cracks. Because if you assume that these individuals say that they say what they're doing, when the inspector comes in, just like Miss Kelly said, then the inspector's going to say, no, it's not there. Or if you have a realtor and you're fixing and flipping the house, they're going to call for an inspection, and you just paid all this money for something and you weren't on top of it because you didn't do a little bit more research. And now you're going to have to pay again because you found, like Dom said, the cheapest person you thought it was. So all these kind of relate and go back to it, and just don't feel, I think sometimes these contractors go out there and they can smell when there is a new investor. And you have to just, they know, they're just like, oh, I know I'm going to get, and you have to make sure that you are strict and stern. Like Miss Kelly said, partner with another experienced investor on your first couple of flips. It's going to save you some time. It's going to make you money, and it's going to make you understand how crazy I sound right now when I'm telling you all this.
You know what? It's like we understand it because we've all been through this before. A person who's never done any major work to a property, not even their own property, because average people who just have their own houses have to go through the same issues. And now it may be with one contractor, but imagine dealing with that like times 5 because you're dealing with so many different contractors or whatnot. Yeah, it's crazy. You would think adults would be adults, but no.
And I will add though, when you get a good one, make sure you pay them on time. That's the other thing too. It's like when you have someone who's good, make sure that you're always on the ready and that they're not hounding you about paying. Because I've seen that too, where they do the work and then people are not paying them. And I always say, and this I learned from my mom when I was growing up, didn't have a car, we didn't have much money. She always says, I don't care how much you got. If somebody gives you a ride, you always put some money for gas. If you got $5 in your pocket, you're going to give that to them, because you never want to be just a loafer. And so I think when someone does some good work for you, you pay right on time. And, I think there's different ways to do it. But if it's done well and on time, I will add tips. I will add always extra amounts. You know what I mean? If I'm really pleased by what they're doing, I'll sweeten the deal because I want that person to pick up the phone the next time. That's what my mom would say. If you don't give any gas money, the next time you call for a ride, they may not pick up the phone. Right. But if you always treat them well and you pay them, they're going to pick up the phone because they're always busy. Good ones are always going to be busy. And I always like to say, I want my job to have priority. So I think when you tip or when you pay on time, that makes them pick up the phone and take your job.
Yeah, in my contract, it says the same thing. So there is the penalty of the $150 a day, but there's also a reward if you finish the project earlier than the on-time schedule. And so we will do that, and we'll figure that's in the contingency. If we're making sure that the project's done on time, you're absolutely rewarded. Just like you said, Alejandro, there's been times that they're like, look, we've worked and we've gotten this done, and I've been flexible on it. It took me about 3 years to find some good crews when I was on the construction side, and my job became just to go and make sure we had jobs and lined up. And I wish that sometimes I can get those guys to just come move to Texas. I know I'll find my crew here. I know I will. It's just a numbers game. You have to go through it. And like you said, Alejandro, you'll eventually, when you find them, you want to keep them. So you have to make sure that they're able to get paid, that they know, and you have open communication with them. And them having the understanding, but also being very, very organized. Because if you know that they're going to end, this goes back to the daily or the semi-daily of calls with your contractors, knowing what's going to happen that week so that you're prepared to be like, hey, Alejandro, hard money lender, we're about to finish this. What do I need to do to get my first draw? Or, hey, private money lender, what do I need to get my first draw? We're going to be done with this. Here are all the pictures. Please schedule an inspection on this day. So it puts pressure on the contractor. It puts pressure, and everyone gets what they want. At the end of the day, everybody wants to get paid for what they've done. But yeah.
Yeah. And I've actually have had rehabbers say once they get a good crew or good team, they keep them busy. So they'll go find another property so that when they're done with this, whatever work they're doing, they're headed to the next property because they don't want to let those people go. That's how valuable good contractors are. They just keep buying properties and keep them working, and they're only exclusively working for them. So it's a big deal, you guys, if you don't know. But like Michele said, it takes time to find the right people. But when you find those good people, make sure you take care of them, like Alejandro said, and like Dominique said. Look at those key signs. Like, look at how they operate. Look at how they present themselves, and determine if that would be the right person to work for you or work on your project.
Sometimes just reach out to them to see how they're doing. I think that's the other thing too. Is like if you develop a relationship with them, find out what their kids' names are. And I always think that the people pieces, if you become a people person, if you become interested, you'd be surprised how much people will do for you if they're just more than a resource to you, than a tool. So I think it's also the personal piece. And once you have that, call them every once in a while. If you're not haven't used them or something, or just in general, just see how they're doing. And you'd be surprised how far that will go if you just become interested in people and their well-being.
Thanks for that tip.
100%.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of the show, and we're going to go into our after show where we talk about our experiences, good and bad. I know we shared a little bit, but we're going to share some stories about rehabbing, contractors, all of the good, all of the bad, whatever we want to talk about. So if you want to hear our candid conversation in regards to our experiences with rehabs, make sure you join the membership. The link is in the description below, and you will be able to access that after show. So thank you guys for sharing your experience and information about rehabbing, and we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, and make sure you guys like and subscribe.